Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Alex Temblador, who is basically, you've been a YA author, and you have now written your first adult book. And it's a fiction book with some, yes, it's half outlaw with some magical realism in it, I believe. Um, and for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
Yeah, so I think with my first book, Secrets of the Casa Rosada, and my second book, Half Outlaw, you can see a lot of similar themes. I love to write stories about families, especially kind of the complexities of love and loyalty and identity within a family. So there's definitely like a messy family in my first book that has issues dealing with secrets, but in Half Outlaw, the family there is a criminal family who has issues with my main character, who is mixed, in that those issues kind of arise from like race and privilege, and kind of those complexities. I love exploring the complexities of family and identity. But you also see like themes of identity, coming of age, cultural heritage, exploration in my books, at least these first two. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what can readers expect from Half Outlaw?
Yes. So Half Outlaw is a fictional adult book, as you mentioned. It's also magical realism, and it jumps between 1963 to 1990. And basically, it's about a story about a woman named Rocky, which is short for Raquel. And she is half Mexican, half white. When she was four, her parents passed away. And so she was shipped to California from Texas to live with her uncle Dodge, who is white. He is a Vietnam veteran. He has substance abuse problems, and he also is part of a one percenter motorcycle club. So basically, those motorcycle clubs that are outlaws who don't fit in with like society and who participate in criminal activity. In the case of the book, The Lawless, they run drugs and they run guns throughout the U.S. And in the book, Rocky is raised by this white man who has these issues and is part of this family. She's enveloped into this family. And the book kind of starts out 10 years after she has left this motorcycle club. She has no connection with them. And she finds out that her Uncle Dodge has died. And they want her to take a cross-country road trip from California to Kentucky, and in memory of him. And the only reason she decides to go is because they'll give her the contact information of her Mexican grandfather, which she didn't know existed. So you will see chapters in the past and chapters in the present that kind of show you why Rocky does not connect with this family, why she has issues with this family, the trauma that she had growing up in this family, and also the love that this family has showed her. So you see kind of this past and present pull and, push and pull between my main character and the people in her family, and how she wants to heal from that trauma throughout the book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, what was the inspiration for this book, for Half Outlaw?
Yeah, so I myself am half Mexican, half white. So I always knew I wanted to explore what it means for me to, move in the world as a mixed woman. My first book, I was kind of exploring my Mexican heritage, but this book, I definitely wanted to explore that aspect of myself. But really the impetus of this book, back in 2014, my uncle randomly called me half outlaw. He said, "I'm an outlaw, that makes you half outlaw." And I said, "I don't know what that means," but it was the coolest phrase I'd ever heard. And my mind started, as many writers do, it starts going off on these, little roads and tangents. And I thought, when I was growing up, people would ask me, "What are you? Like, what's your identity? Like, what's your ethnicity or race?" And I would always say half Mexican, half white, or just half Mexican. And so half outlaw to me kind of connected to that aspect of my mixed identity. And I thought, oh, this would be kind of a cool way to explore it. Like, what makes you a half outlaw? Like, halfway law abiding, halfway criminal, like you toe the line of that. What is that? So that really kind of started the idea. And then that same uncle kind of fleshed out the whole story. He, rides motorcycles. He's gruffy. He went to the Vietnam War. He's he's a very different man from who I am. We're from different generations. He's 70 something now. And he's a white man. And I thought, what would it be like for, a white man of that generation who's like gruff, rides motorcycles, and does not have the same political or social beliefs that I do, to raise like a mixed girl. And it just kind of went from there. I thought, oh, let me involve motorcycles. And then all of a sudden I had this motorcycle club, and so it's nothing related, autobiographically, but he really did, just who he was and my relationship with him in some ways kind of helps start the story.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what kind of research went into writing the book? And how did you put it in to the book?
Yeah, so I was born in 1990, so most of this book actually takes place between 1963 and 1990. Obviously, I had to do some research, and I used a little bit of common sense, knowing history, like what technology would have been there and what technology wouldn't have been there. But I did talk to my parents and have to ask them, hey, did you have battery operated lanterns in 1965? Like very specific things that I didn't even think about while writing the book. And during the editing phase, I would go to them, and I think I called them for like 2 weeks straight saying, do you have this? Did you have that? What was this like? So that was really fun to kind of see how they grew up. But the other big aspects of researching this book was the motorcycle club culture. I didn't grow up, in a motorcycle club culture. I knew some people who have been in them. I have seen them at, in areas in which like my family would take us to eat, but I didn't really know a lot about it. So I did do research in that, like I tried to read firsthand accounts by people who were in these clubs. But I do always try to tell readers, like when you read this book, you might see similar language and traditions that some of the motorcycle club in the book has with like ones in real life. But I really tried to fictionalize it. I don't base it on any one motorcycle club. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to give this club its own traditions and identity. And really the story is more about the family aspect than the club aspect. So then I got kind of lucky where I would meet different women who grew up in clubs. And it was very interesting to talk to them about how was it like for you being a woman in this environment? What was that like? And some of them read the book, so that was good to get feedback. I also had a great beta reader who gave me so much information on motorcycles. And then I went and got my motorcycle license so I can know what it's like to ride a motorcycle, which is like the best research. And now I'm obsessed. I want to buy a motorcycle. I need to get another advance on a book so I can go out and do that.
That's great. Now that's research.
That's research. Yes.
Wow. So what was your favorite research story?
Oh, I mean, definitely the motorcycle, going out and like feeling what it's like, because I kind of I'd been on a motorcycle, but I kind of had to know the mechanics and how it's not necessarily, I don't know, it's kind of poetic to ride a motorcycle, like how your body actually moves and connects with the bike is such an interesting concept. And I'd never done research for a book where I had to go and learn something. And I think that's something I want to do from now on. Like something I really want to learn, let me figure out a way to put it in the book so I can go and research it and, experience it. So I think, experiencing the research is something I want to involve in my writing from now on. It's so much fun. Yeah. Reading's fun, but getting on a motorcycle is way more fun.
That's really interesting. I love that idea, is to really get into something, or, get into a hobby or something and put that whole hobby into a book. I love it.
I met a writer here in Dallas, and she told me years ago, they used to host this kind of experience thing for writers where they would invite a bunch of people out who would teach them how to do different things. So for instance, if you were a true crime writer and you wanted to know how to like pick a lock, they would invite people out to show you how to pick a lock so that you would know how to write it in your book. And I think that's something I want to take forward in my writing. I think that's amazing.
What a great idea.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge that you had in putting out and writing your, Half Outlaw?
Yeah. The biggest challenge came in the editing phase. I'd written this book back in 2017. It took me about a month and a half, and I'd been editing it for years. We sold it in 2020. And within the book, you will find that Rocky on this cross-country trip meets a bunch of people who are of diverse identities. So we're talking race, ethnicity, abilities, sexual orientation, and religions. And I wanted to make sure that I was being authentic to those identities. I wanted to make sure I was being respectful. And while I have a lot of experience writing about diversity as a journalist and as an author, between the time I'd written this book and the time that I edited it for my publisher, I had learned so much more. And I had been teaching classes about how to write for different identities. And so the hardest part was going through the book and finding things that I'd missed. Because if you really want to write an authentic character of a different identity, there's a lot you kind of have to unpack within yourself. There's a lot that you miss as a writer because you think, oh, there can't be any way that I would write something. But we all have those little things that we don't even realize are sitting within us. And so we accidentally might write them. So it was very hard, I think, for about 2 months. I mean, we use the phrase, comb through it with a fine tooth comb. Like my comb was even finer and I was getting so stressed out just to make sure that it would be authentic and, there was no stereotypes or cliches. And I'm sure I missed something, unfortunately, or maybe 5 years from now, we'll find out that maybe I should have written it a different way. But I really tried so hard and I put in so much more effort. And I talked to other authors if they ever did this, and nobody has given me feedback that they did the things that I did. So I'm really hoping that it turns out well. I think it did. I put in a lot of heart to try to make that authentic and respectful.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the magical realism.
Yes. So what's funny, this book is magical realism, but it didn't start out in the first draft. It was there, but it wasn't as heavy as it is now. I had a little bit of it, and I remember talking to my agent and saying, it feels kind of weird. It feels like I'm just dropping it in one chapter and I don't have it enough. But so we kind of moved forward and we couldn't figure out how to work with it until we got out into submission time with publishers. And we kept getting feedback of them saying, we don't really know where this fits. We don't know if it's literary fiction. We don't know if it's popular fiction, women's fiction. And my agent asked me, well, what do you want? And I said, well, it'd be nice if it was literary fiction. I can't control what publishers do. She said, well, I think you need to ramp up that magical realism. So I went through it again and I put it's probably in almost every chapter, and it's very integrated into the story now. And basically what the magical realism does in this book is it reminds you that Rocky is half Mexican. And, magical realism was created by Latino writers to criticize the effects of colonialism in Latin American countries. And so I wanted to pull that aspect of Rocky's heritage, even though has never been connected to her Latino culture in the book. I wanted to highlight that for readers to remind them, she is half Mexican, this is part of her. But also it's a type of perspective. She has these magical realism experiences. She sees the world around her in a magical realism way. And it does kind of connect to her trauma of her past. So you will see sometimes certain things will trigger the magical realism, or she is trying to understand what's going on in her life through these magical realism experiences. And I hope that comes across to readers.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So how much of Rocky is you?
I mean, she has short hair. I have her cut her hair off in like a few chapters in. So in so far as like we look similar, we have the same background, I will also say she is kind of like the angriness that I think we all have in ourselves at times. I kind of put all my anger in her because I think she has a lot to be angry about. Like she grew up in a very traumatic, abandoned, neglectful environment. And in some ways I have had certain experiences that she's had with family members and like, you know, they love you, but sometimes they say and do things that hurt you. So I try to put those feelings in. She's also a very closed off person. And I used to be that way. Like I didn't like people touching me. I didn't like affection and intimacy. And it's something that she works through in the book. And it's something I work through in my life too. So it was really nice to kind of, and that's what I always do with my books. I try to put a little bit of something of myself into the character so that I can work through it as they work through it. Maybe they work through it in a different way, but it's a nice little therapy.
I think that's great. I think, I don't know whether most authors do put themselves in their characters or not.
Oh,
but
maybe not.
yeah, but I think it's, I think it's good. I think it's good to do that. I love it. That's why I asked the question, because I had a funny feeling.
Yeah. I think people will see, if they know me, they might go, ooh, okay, that's Alex in some ways.
Great. So what can we expect from you in the near future?
Yeah, so I have already written a third book.
Great.
Hoping to see what's going on with it. It is also a magical realism story, and it kind of focuses, without giving too much away, on a myth that is part of my heritage. So I'm really excited to kind of explore that. It's set in Texas, I can say that. Hopefully we'll find out within the year what's going on with that book. And then I have started working on my first nonfiction, or I have a nonfiction proposal out in the world, a craft writing book, which is all I can kind of say. And, from here on out, I'm excited to see what's going to happen with Half Outlaw. I'm excited to, maybe do a tour, teach some creative writing classes, which is what I do, between books. So that's exciting too. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now I have some questions for you about being a writer. What is your favorite part of being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
My favorite part is talking to people about the text. When I've been able to connect with readers in the past and they approach me and start telling me the story that I've written, I get to see my work from their perspective, which is very interesting because when you're writing, it's always in your own head and you're trying to craft something that you need to get out of you. But once you send it out into the world, people take it and they interpret it through their own experiences and their own identity and, their own analysis. And that's always exciting. Sometimes they'll tell me something that I didn't try to do on purpose. And they're like, yeah, when you did this and you connected that, this is like a cool theme. And I'll just be like, wow, that's amazing. Because I used to do that with authors. I used to analyze their stories, and now people are doing that with my book. Or when they tell me how a character made them feel seen or represented or understood for the first time, or that they were able to talk to their family member about something that was hard to talk to without having the book, and that story helped them to do that. I mean, I've even had a therapist out in New York tell me he's using one of my creative pieces to help teach therapists how to connect and understand Latino culture and get over the boundaries. So seeing my work do stuff like that and talking to people about how my work or stories can help them in some way, it's just the best thing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's probably why I keep writing, because I love it.
Wow. So what do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process? And how do you overcome that?
I have trouble with the plot. I always have trouble writing the plot. I can do character, I can do scene, I can, get to the ending, but it's the climax is always something I really struggle with. how do I help get my character from point A to point B? They have to go through some huge tension and huge kind of life-changing experience to get to the end of the story. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be huge, but that tends to be the case with my characters. And I always struggle with trying to figure out where that is, like what it should be, how I should do it. And I think with my first two books, definitely I have changed the climax, changed the plot. The first two books, I will say, were written as like pantsing. So I didn't have any outline. I just was writing. With my third book that I've written, my agent told me, you have to plot this out before you start. And it was the best thing for me because I was able to finally kind of like play around and input different climaxes and plots and see what worked and what didn't work. And I was able to talk to her without writing the whole book and then realizing it didn't work. So I would suggest if anybody has that issues, plotting is the best.
I was going to ask you if you were a pantser or a plotter. Yeah.
Yep, I'm a plotter now. Although lately I've been thinking about a story and I still can't figure out the plot. And I'm thinking maybe I should start pantsing that one. Who knows?
I know it's funny because sometimes the characters kind of let you know where you're going to go next. Did that happen to you, even though when you were plotting it? Did your character sort of say, I want to go this way?
On the third book, yes. On occasion, there were like different subplots that would come up. On Half Outlaw, I didn't know where she was going to go on this cross-country ride. The extent of outlining that I did for Half Outlaw was basically saying, okay, I know she's going to go through these states and it has to be like kind of this timeline. I don't know what's going to happen in between them. So
okay.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly I kind of have an idea who she would meet based on the state, but I don't know. I definitely changed the big climactic part. That was a huge change and it works way better the way it is now, but it's sometimes just finding it, you know.
Okay. So what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Ooh, during my writing career, let's see. I think going, when my first book came out, there's so much that people don't tell you. There's not a guidebook on how to be an author or how it works or like what's correct or not correct. So it was so amazing to go to different conferences. And as a YA author, my first book was YA. I was able to go to a lot of conferences that connected teens and young adult authors. And I think young adult authors are very open to helping each other, to giving each other advice, and to lift you up when you are kind of flailing or don't know what to do. So that was one of the most amazing adventures, to be able to talk to YA authors and meet authors whose books I know that are like famous in the writing world, and just see they're kind of regular people. I mean, they're just like me in some ways. And so that was the best part of my career so far. Yeah.
So are there any particular groups, clubs, or organizations that that you would recommend to other writers that have helped you in your career?
Yes. I have taught with writingworkshops.com and Writers League of Texas. And Writers League of Texas especially offers so many resources, free and paid, seminars and get-togethers and classes. And they just don't focus entirely on the writing. There's a lot of aspects of like business and marketing that involve like your writing. So I think that is phenomenal. And Writing Workshops is the same too. They have a diverse set of authors who come in and give you feedback. And I've been able to witness how it's helped new writers get published in literary magazines or get their first book deals. I've had some students that are attendees who have been in my class who have gone on to publish, and that's really exciting to see. So I think you can see it, that those two organizations, writingworkshops.com and Writers League of Texas, they have a good track record. they get the word out, they offer the information, and it pays off for a lot of writers.
Great. So what is the greatest lesson that you've learned in your writing career?
Ooh, that you do not have to take the path that is traditional. So I thought, I went and got my MFA in creative writing, and I thought, great, I'm going to go out and get a literary agent. It's going to be easy, no issue. And I had a really tough time finding a literary agent, to the point where it seemed like I kept getting good feedback and good notes saying, this is a great story, it's a great book, it's a great idea, you're clearly a good writer, but there's no market for your book. And so I was realizing at the time that literary agents weren't really excited to share the type of story that I was writing. I think it's changed since then, because we're talking back in like 2016, 2017, 2015, when I was pitching it out, and things have definitely changed for many writers in the publishing industry. So I asked an author that I knew, I said, what should I do? Like, should I give up on this book? Should I just write another one? What should I do? And she said, how about you go directly to a publisher and look at independent publishers, smaller publishers. There might be something there for you. So I only submitted to 2, and I got a reply back within 3 weeks of an offer for my first book. I didn't have an agent. Yeah, but then I knew an agent had my book, so I reached out and said, hey, I have this opportunity. I ended up getting an agent after I got the book deal. So I kind of went this non-traditional path. And even with Half Outlaw, you know, I had this idea of kind of where I wanted to go and how I wanted to be published, and it's kind of even changed along the route. So what I would tell like writers is, look, it's okay to look for untraditional routes. It's okay not to do it in the correct way that everybody might teach you to do. Look for opportunities in whatever way they present themselves, because you never know where it's going to take you. Yeah.
Okay, great. I have 2 questions for you. Where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And we can get your books, Alex's books, there if you call 508-796-5613, or send us email at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. But where else could people find your books?
Yes, please buy from Annie's Bookstop first and foremost. But if not, you can find them in any bookstore, really. A lot of libraries. They're easy to be, if they're not there, ask the front desk person, they'll have them ordered in. I love Bookshop because I think it supports a lot of independent bookstores like Annie's Bookstop. I suggest that, but all the book places, or come to my website, alextemblador.com, and you can see where to find all of my books.
Okay, and that was my next question: is how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Yes, so alextemblador.com. You can find kind of everything there, but I will encourage you to connect with me on social media. So Instagram or Twitter @Alex_Temblador. I'm on there very consistently. I love connecting with writers. I love, answering questions. So
great. Well, that's all I have for you today. And thank you so much for joining us, Alex. And good luck with your new book, Half Outlaw.
Thank you. I'm so glad to talk to everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.